Does anybody else know this term clown stick? Am I the only one that doesn't know clown stick?
Cannot say I do.
And I've taken like clown classes.
Okay. I don't think it has anything to do with clowns. I think I know what this means. I feel like I know what it means, but
Well, what is it?
well, I'm still not sure. It seems to have something to do with Trump and idiots.
That's a very broad field.
Thank you. So I just thought,
interesting.
That's what I thought. I thought I'd ask you guys because it sounds like a young person thing. Like no, okay, all right. I feel a little bit better.
Well, Natascha and I aren't as young as we seem, I think.
We're just vampires.
Jerk. Then there was another one, jerk wagon.
I mean, that seems self-explanatory. I don't know that I've heard it before, but I think I get the idea.
I learned what bone smashing was this week. Did you know that one, Chris?
I'm not sure I want to, but I'm going to ask anyway. I do not know.
Is it the thing where people do to give themselves a stronger jaw or something?
Oh,
yes.
Oh my God.
And they create microfractures in their head, and then the bones heal back stronger, and then you end up with a really well sculpted symmetrical face.
Whoa. So you're saying people are actually breaking their jaws?
Like handsome Squidward?
Wow. Wow.
And that allows you to do something called mogging.
I did hear about mogging because I don't. There was like some post. I think it was maybe about like Zoran, but it was like kind of being ironic, but it was something about like so and so like mogged so and so, and I was like, I had to like look it up. Anyway, sorry, that was a young.
Why didn't you explain mogging?
No, it's just I think it is. It's just kind of like, to use a word from like my generation, I feel like we might refer to it as like stunting on people, but it's just like when you like look so good, you're like making other people look bad. It's my understanding. Maybe you have like a better definition.
Okay, well, I think we've established our.
Welcome to the weekly, Natascha and Danielle.
This is pretty much how we roll.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
All right, so that's our welcome to this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. It's our one-stop shop for highlights from shows across the Labor Radio Podcast Network. I'm Chris Garlock.
And I'm Harold Phillips, really complimenting Chris on that smooth transition as he pulled the script up.
Very nice, Chris. I'm Patrick Dixon.
And in case you couldn't tell by the laughter, we are joined by, and this is our first time ever, so we are really, really thrilled. We have guest co-host Natascha, Elena, Uhlmann, and Danielle Smith. Did I get those right, guys?
Sure did.
Sure did.
Organizers,
you did not
co-hosts.
script that simultaneous answer.
I can read a script. All right. Organizers and co-hosts, you've heard them before. The Labor Notes Podcast, the weekly show from the folks behind the always fabulous Labor Notes Conference, coming up not a moment too soon, this June in Chicago.
Thanks so much for having us here.
Yeah, great to be here.
All right, here's what's coming up on today's show.
From Madison Labor Radio on WORT in Madison, Wisconsin, a town in Michigan is raising money for a tribute to Big Annie, a miners' union organizer from the early 20th century.
We're here at the Elks Lodge in Calumet, and we're doing a fundraiser to build a bronze life-size statue of Big Annie.
Then on the Voice podcast, the official podcast of the United University Professions, Mike Leasy remembers the tragic Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire.
He said that watching girls jump was, quote, like watching angels dropping.
On America Works, a nurse and former Marine reflects on caring for veterans during the COVID pandemic.
I mean, that little old man in the bed was one of the baddest men on the planet. Now here he is, struggling to breathe, the most basic function of life, and this guy can't do it.
On the Line checks in with a leader of San Francisco educators after their successful 4-day strike.
It all felt like the right thing to do, but now we know it was the right thing to do, right? Like the community was behind us every step of the way. And looking back at the 4 days of the strike, we know we got stronger each day.
And the SAG-AFTRA podcast takes a humorous look at AI actors and whether they can really replace humans. Spoiler alert, nope.
So I did a dishwasher commercial audition where all they have to do is put a pot in the dishwasher and say it's so easy, and they can't load the dishwasher. They'll throw it on the ground. They'll put it in upside down. They'll put it in and it goes through it.
Those are really funny, those videos. I don't know if
you haven't seen those videos, oh my God, they will crack you up.
I gotta check them out.
They're so great.
And saving the best for last, the Labor Notes podcast celebrates a year of being not on the air, but on the streets where they belong.
Now, hold on. Let's not save them for last. Let's do them up front. So the Labor Notes podcast debuted almost exactly a year ago on March 14th. 3/14, Happy Pi Day. And has been dropping new episodes every Friday since then.
So, Danielle, Natascha, talk a little bit about, it's a year. It's probably flown by most days. What's it been like? Because you guys kind of jumped into this with both feet, and your producers, your hosts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been great. Personally, I feel so lucky to be surrounded by some really brilliant organizers like Danielle and our phenomenal pod producer, Sindhu Sundar, and our other coworkers. And I think the pod is a great way to pull the curtain back a little bit on Labor Notes, highlight some of the work we're doing, as well as hear from workers who are leading fights at work that really exemplify the organizing principles that we talk about. And also, we engineered a situation where we get to talk about why every movie is secretly a labor movie for like 2 hours a week during work hours. So that's been great.
Yeah, no, it's been so fantastic. And I love that you guys have the actual birthday. I'm so embarrassed to admit, I never looked that up. So it's funny knowing that it's literally for us as we're recording, tomorrow. And yeah, as you sort of mentioned, the year has flown by and we do an episode every week. So we do have 52 episodes in our backlog. I will admit, one of those episodes is a 2-minute episode where we're saying we're taking a break that week, but it counts. If you count in the,
counts.
Totally counts.
It counts.
And yeah, I mean, I think the best part of what we do at Labor Notes is what workers are doing to put the movement back into the labor movement. So it's just been great to actually hear stories about that and workers actually talking about that on the pod this past year. And just want to second what Natascha said, working with brilliant people like Natascha and Sindhu is really some of the highlight of my work.
Yeah, but one of the things I think that impresses me the most is that you've been consistent in putting out a show.
Yes, every week.
Every Friday. And this is not your only job. I mean, it's not like you can just focus on just doing the podcast. How have you managed to do that with all the other stuff that Labor Notes does on a regular basis?
Honestly, shout out pod producer Sindhu Sundar, who somehow compiles a year of labor education into a weekly script. She's our hero and our angel. I think that's the secret.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, we are vampires, so that also not sleeping frees up a lot of time to work on the pod.
Yeah.
I mean, if people do want a little behind the scenes, something we'll do, and I'm curious, maybe listeners notice it. But for episodes that are more evergreen, which are some of my favorite ones, the ones that are about stewards, corners, or organizing, we often are able to sort of record those ahead of time and save them to use on different weeks when things are a little bit busier. So that's your little Easter egg for those who are listening.
So we're going to talk about this week's show where you talk about the anniversary, and I think it was you, Natascha, but something that you said really resonated for me because you talked about how doing this show has been a real help getting through the last year. And the reason I started the Labor History Today podcast during Trump 1 was for me grounding myself in labor history and being able to sort of focus on that really helped me. So when you said that really, it made sense to me.
Oh, yeah. It's been great, hearing from workers who are taking up these fights, whether it's, immigrant defense, fighting for their immigrant coworkers or their immigrant neighbors, and doing so in a way that not just that really builds the union. I think stuff like that is just so heartening. And it really is a gift to get to spend time on just hearing from such incredibly cool people week after week.
Pod therapy.
So Natascha, Danielle, you want to say anything about this week's show, your anniversary show?
Yeah, we kind of took a look at the past year and some of what were kind of the most, we sort of felt exciting and hopefully instructive stories that we've covered about, union members responding to the Trump administration's attacks, building, power in their unions, fighting for strong contracts and more transparency from their union leaders. And so we look at a few different ones. Like we look at an episode we did about the Minneapolis mobilization against ICE just this past January. We also looked at, some of our coverage of the Federal Unionist Network, some of our Stewards Corners on health and safety and workplace safety, and how meetings like union meetings can actually be good, and some other episodes and voices in there. But it's basically kind of like, imagine you just watched like your favorite sitcom, and now it's that episode at the end of the season where they go back and show clips of your favorite moments. It's a little bit like that.
You're listening to the Labor Notes Podcast, our weekly show on rank and file news and organizing tactics. I'm Natascha Uhlmann, a staff writer at Labor Notes.
And I'm Danielle Smith, an organizer at Labor Notes.
I can't believe we've been doing this for a whole year. We're 52 episodes, tens of thousands of downloads, and 2 aspirational pod smoking jackets into this project. And it feels like only a matter of time before someone declares us the Labor Joe Rogan.
I'm mentally preparing for Gavin Newsom's team to hit us up on his Putting Out 2028 Feelers trail. For those listening for the first time, welcome. What a great time to get familiar with the Labor Notes program leading up to our 2026 conference in Chicago this June, and also with what we do here on the pod. I mean, besides pretending we're lounging in smoking jackets in a literal steward's corner, as Natascha was alluding to before.
Wearing a smoking jacket is a state of mind.
Totally. P.S. Be sure to check out our Stewards Corner episodes for organizing advice and running jokes on our stewards' personas. It's totally worth it. The organizing part, at least.
I will say, talking about and hearing from workers on the pod has been a refuge of sanity during an otherwise incredibly destabilizing time. I think lately, many of us have been, at least privately, kind of questioning even our most basic assumptions about how our society functions. And maybe we're even wondering, what's the point of anything we're doing right now? How do we organize when the boss runs roughshod over its obligations in a collective bargaining agreement, or tries to just rip it up as the federal government did a year ago with an executive order invalidating the CBAs of over 1 million federal workers? How do we rally and step up for our immigrant neighbors and coworkers being brutalized by an extensive campaign of state terror, as even New York Times op-ed writers are calling it lately? Not to mention trying to show solidarity with our siblings in Gaza reckoning with a genocide. How do we gather ourselves as a public and a movement to resist? Hearing from workers each week who are organizing to move their coworkers on workplace issues, on making their unions better, on getting better framing and facts on political issues is giving me so much hope.
I feel the same way, and I think the stories we've tried to highlight on the pod over the past year lay out almost like a blueprint for what a fight back looks like. What building a more resilient democratic culture in our workplaces and our unions look like, and what it means to keep going. I wanted to talk about the stories we featured that are kind of core to the Labor Notes mission of putting the movement back in the labor movement. That basically means supporting workers who want a voice in their unions, who want to know what's going on in bargaining, and who want to build power with their coworkers and be actively involved in making sure the union really fights hard for them and that they are the union. And at a time that union density is still low, still just about 10% in 2025, according to data last month from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it might be tempting to think of this as a nice to have when it feels like we should be directing all our focus to new organizing. But labor's power and even appeal to workers comes from unions' ability to actually deliver meaningful wins for members, to actively fight for their demands, and to fundamentally be places where workers have democratic power. I'm thinking of the episode that our coworker Lisa Hsu was on, where she talked about what it would mean for a union like the UFCW, that's the United Food and Commercial Workers, to actually mobilize and energize its 1.2 million members, which makes it the second largest private sector union. That was in an episode we ran on June 6 titled, Grocery Workers at the UFCW Are Organizing for a Fighting Union. Here's how Lisa put it.
So if we had a rejuvenated UFCW from top to bottom with active leadership and an active shop floor, the whole U.S. labor movement could look very different. And UFCW members are in every community. We have grocery workers, meatpacking workers all across the U.S. So we need the same kind of transformation in the UFCW that we've seen in the UAW and the Teamsters.
We talked on that episode about some of the promising currents in the UFCW, including to coordinate bargaining. Did you know that the UFCW negotiates hundreds of separate local agreements with a single employer? As Lisa put it, quote, "Without coordinated bargaining, we're leaving a lot of worker power on the table."
It's kind of haunting to remember the sleeping giant descriptor for UFCW. These are workers dealing with significant issues with wages. The average retail worker makes something like less than $35,000 a year, according to BLS data in 2024.
Seriously, I mean, just imagine what sort of gains could be made if the sleeping giant was to wake up. Another episode I really liked was when we had our coworker Al Bradbury on to talk about similar currents brewing within the Letter Carriers Union, the National Association of Letter Carriers, which she covers. That was in an episode we did on April 11th last year titled Facing Privatization and Doge Attacks, Postal Workers Are Fighting Back. NALC members who actually recently started bargaining again a few weeks ago as their current contract expires in May have been mobilizing over the past few years. They organized a Vote No campaign in 2024 and early 2025, and they've been rallying all year to fight the Trump administration's efforts to cut the Postal Service. A lot of the energy came from workers organizing over what they described as NALC leadership keeping them in the dark about how bargaining was going. But there was a lot they were fighting for, and they saw energizing the union and organizing for more member engagement and transparency from leadership as the way to do it. Al said that members were also, quote, talking about what they wanted out of the contract, like eliminating two-tier pay and how to fight back against then Postmaster General DeJoy's plans for postal consolidation, and how to get organized for the union's national convention in August in 2024.
Well, that's our episode. We'll link all the episodes you heard about today in the description. Please rate us or leave us a review on Apple or Spotify.
See you next week. Solidarity, y'all.
Next up, Madison Labor Radio from WORT in Wisconsin brings us a mix of labor news and labor history from the Midwest.
And they always do. You know, I love seeing the rundown of what they cover every week because it can be anything from what's going on the ground in Madison to what's happening internationally or national issues. You never know what's going to come up in this show.
Veda Rhetoric is on a mission to gain real recognition for a young union organizer who led miners in a fight for better working conditions and higher wages in the early 1900s in Calumet, Michigan. Her name was Annie Clements, and she is known as Big Annie. Labor Radio reporter Janine Ramsey talked to Veda at an event to raise funds for a bronze statue of Big Annie that will be erected in Calumet to honor her contributions.
Big Annie in 1913 led the miners, thousands of miners, daily carrying a 6-by-10-foot flag, inspiring them when they were on strike for better wages and mine safety. And that was one of the very early strikes in the state of Michigan. This was at a time when labor unions were just forming, and her actions here led to laws being changed eventually to give the American people the legal right to protest peacefully.
Who was Annie and when was she born, and what community are we talking about here in Michigan?
We're talking about Calumet, Michigan, located up in the most northern part of Michigan in the Keweenaw Peninsula. She was 24 years old when she did all of this. It was at a time when women couldn't vote and they had no voice. She was out every day leading these miners on strike.
What was her full name and what got her interested in helping the miners out?
Her name was Anna Klobuchar Clements. She helped the miners' families who were injured in the mines, and she saw the injustice here. Her father was a miner, her brother was a miner, her husband was a miner. There was one person who died here every week in the mines in 1913. The mines were not safe at that time.
Where were all these miners from?
People came here from all over the world to work in the mines. They spoke different languages, they had different churches. It was really quite difficult for her to organize.
Was she successful in organizing the miners?
She made a lot of progress, but the company stood their ground, and eventually the strike did not end well. She organized a Christmas Eve party at the Italian Hall. Someone yelled fire, and there was no fire. It created a terrible stampede, and 73 people died on Christmas Eve in 1913. It broke her spirit. She was quite sick after that, and it was just a couple of months later she left the area, moved to Chicago, and she never spoke of what happened here again to anyone. Her ancestors didn't know anything about their grandmother. We teamed up with them 2 years ago. They were amazed at what legacy she had left here.
What do you want people to remember about Big Annie?
I want young people to be inspired to speak out when they see injustice, to be able to have the courage to speak out. That's what Annie did. She inspired miners, which was not an easy thing for a woman to do at that time. I think her legacy is important here.
Did safety conditions improve at the mines?
I'm not sure about the safety conditions, but they did get a small raise. What happened here made news around the world.
Can you say a little bit about the celebration that's going on today?
The Copper Dog 150 sled race is going on here. There's many people that come from around the country for this. And we're here at the Elks Lodge in Calumet, and we're doing a fundraiser for Big Annie to build a bronze life-size statue of Big Annie. We're almost there. Our goal is $150,000. We're at $130,000.
Why a statue to Big Annie?
Because women are not represented like they should be for their achievements. And in our area, we have a George Gipp Memorial, and we have a memorial for Big Louie, but there's nothing here for women, so we need to be represented too and have our voice heard. Anyone wanting to donate to Big Annie can make a donation to the Keweenaw Community Foundation in Hancock.
We were talking to Veda Riederich. This is Janine Ramsey reporting for Labor Radio.
Chris will have to add that to the Labor Landmarks database very soon.
Which, if you folks haven't checked that out, you really should. It's got landmarks all across the United States and even a few places outside the United States. Just go to laborheritage.org and click on resources. Add your own while you're there.
Our next segment comes from the Voice podcast.
Mike Lisi remembers the tragic Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which took place on March 25th, 1911.
Morris Whitey Passoff couldn't believe his eyes, and he couldn't turn away. The 15-year-old copy boy for the New York World newspaper watched in horror as young women and teenage girls in groups of 2s and 3s climbed out the windows of the Triangle Shirtwaist Company and onto the thin ledges outside the upper floors of the blazing ash building. Then they jumped. Some held hands as they leaped, their long dresses flapping and tresses whipped by the wind before thudding the pavement below. They fell 8, 9, 10 stories, choosing instant death over dying in the inferno that killed 146 workers, many of them female Jewish and Italian immigrants, on a sunny Saturday afternoon, March 25th, 1911. UUP retiree Judy Wishnia shared that story with UUP's membership magazine, The Voice, for a 2011 article marking the 100th anniversary of the tragic Triangle Fire. Passoff, her father, told her the story. He said that watching the girls jump was, quote, like watching angels dropping, unquote. Unions have never forgotten these fallen workers, whose deaths spurred sweeping workplace reforms and a huge boost for the fledgling labor movement. The Triangle Blaze sparked a sudden upsurge in union membership. Workers flocked to join the International Ladies Garment Workers Union and its fight for workers' safety reforms and better conditions for factory laborers. Meanwhile, an outraged public demanded action to improve unsafe workplace conditions. In June 1911, New York created the Factory Investigating Commission. Union leader Samuel Gompers was a commissioner, and Francis Perkins, who later became U.S. Secretary of Labor, served on the panel. Scores of new workplace safety laws came from the committee, including mandating factory reforms such as the installation of automatic sprinklers, lighted exit signs, firewalls, fire extinguishers, and fire alarms. Such reforms were a pipe dream for immigrant workers in sweatshops like the Triangle Shirtwaist Company, where employees toiled 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and were paid between $3 and $20 weekly, depending upon expertise and experience. As for how the fire ignited, no one really knows for sure. The fire marshal blamed a lit cigarette tossed in a scrap fabric bin under a cutter's table as the cause. It was around closing time, 4:45 p.m., when the horror began. That's when worker Eva Harris screamed to factory manager Samuel Bernstein and pointed to smoke in a corner of the 8th floor. Bernstein tried to turn a hose on the flames, but it wouldn't work. Workers doused the fire with buckets of water, but by then, the blaze was already raging. An 8th floor bookkeeper who telephoned 10th floor employees about the fire couldn't reach the 9th floor, which lacked fire alarms. One of 2 exits on that floor was bolted shut. Management would lock workers in so they wouldn't steal. Dozens of employees were able to scramble out the second exit, which led onto the roof. But fire blocked that exit minutes later. Terrified workers jammed into 2 freight elevators, which only had room for 12 people. The elevator operators saved dozens of lives before the fire, and the bodies of workers who jumped down the shafts in a desperate attempt to escape ground those elevators to a halt. The building's flimsy fire escape twisted and snapped by the searing heat and the crush of workers clinging to it, sending victims spiraling to a concrete courtyard more than 100 feet below. The fire department's ladder trucks were useless. They only reached the 6th floor. It was all over in 30 minutes. Nearly 150 workers had perished. Of those, 54 died by jumping. Their bodies lay in piles on the street as firefighters worked to extinguish the blaze. Ironically, the building itself was fireproof. For UUP Look Back, I'm Mike Lisi. The Voice Podcast is a production of United University Professions. You can find UUP on Facebook, Instagram, X, and Blue Sky at UUP Info. UUP is on the web at uupinfo.org. You can download the Voice Podcast theme for free by going to uniteduniversityprofessions.bandcamp.com. Thanks for listening.
All right, next up, America Works, which brings us oral histories of working people from across the country.
In this episode, Robert O'Keefe, a nurse and former Marine, talks about caring for veterans in a VA hospital.
And I mean, this seems like a great episode, as I think we are seeing like so much of the funding for VA hospitals under attack, for people to understand like how important they are. From this first person perspective, just seems really valuable right now.
Welcome to America Works, interviews with contemporary workers from throughout the United States collected by the library's American Folklife Center as part of its Occupational Folklife Project. This is staff folklorist Nancy Gross, and today's episode features excerpts from a longer interview with Robert O'Keefe, a nurse and former Marine whose experiences and dedication led him to his current career in a Veterans Administration hospital. He was interviewed in Wilmington, Delaware during the COVID epidemic by oral historian Elena Glazer for her occupational folklife project on nursing America's veterans.
Growing up, I was a high school athlete. After that, went into the Marine Corps. I went straight out of high school into the Marine Corps. I was raised by a single mom. She was also a nurse. I did 7 years in the Marine Corps. I was a combat engineer, so nothing to do with healthcare. While I was there, I started working on my plan to get out, which included I set up an apartment in Jacksonville, Florida. I got accepted to Florida State College in Jacksonville, and then I also lined up 2 jobs. When I graduated, I just transitioned right into like an orientation period where I worked with another nurse for probably 6 weeks or so. I was only a graduate nurse for, I think, less than a month before I already had my license in Florida. I got a Delaware license. I moved up here and I started working right there in Delaware at a community hospital. I worked at that small community hospital for a very long time, and I never planned to leave, you know. I felt like I was happy in what I was doing. I felt rewarded. I was fairly compensated. I was given a generous vacation package, and there was no reason to leave that job. Really what happened for me was back in 2016, I deployed with my reserve unit over the desert. When I was over at the desert, a couple of things happened. One of which was I saw a guy get his foot crushed. Just various things that had happened while I was over there. And while I was over there, I told my wife, I was like, when I get home, I think I'm going to go try to work at the VA. And she goes, okay. So I did. There's a handful of nurses in primary care that were all prior service. And I think that the VA is a good place for nurses to go that are prior service. Being a veteran, I understand that just because the MRI doesn't show you there's pain in my knee doesn't mean there's not something seriously wrong. And I think having that understanding, I know how it is to go to a doctor and feel like they're dismissing it because they didn't find something wrong. And I don't think that happens at the VA. While I was going through COVID in Wilmington, Delaware, the National Guard was brought in and they were moving beds. So we set up several hallways for just COVID patients. And because I was in the veterans nursing home, that was also a little emotional for me too, because these guys were Korean War vets, some of the older Vietnam vets. These guys were in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, at one point in their life, I mean, that little old man in the bed was one of the baddest men on the planet. Now here he is, you know, struggling to breathe, the most basic function of life, and this guy can't do it. It was a challenge to watch. Then the holidays were coming around, and all of a sudden there was a huge COVID outbreak in Oklahoma City. I told my wife, I was like, I got to go help. And she's like, well, we're going to miss the holidays and stuff. And I was like, yeah, but there's people dying and they need help. And I don't think that a lot of people are going to volunteer to go. Really what the driving factor was is that usually as a nurse, I'm in a position to help somebody in front of me due to illness or injury, right? It's a great talent to have. It's a very rewarding and fulfilling career. And, you know, I hear people talking all the time about how much nurses are compensated. And I'm like, yeah, we're fairly compensated. But if you ask most nurses, most of our reward is gratitude. I did my 20 years. I could have put down my pack, but, you know, I still feel like I've got so much more to give. And nursing provides me an outlet where I get to do that all the time. I get to give all the time.
Thank you for listening to America Works.
Let's shift to On the Line, where we hear from Natalie Hriese of the United Educators of San Francisco.
Hriese is vice president of substitutes for UESF and a core leader of the union's recent 4-day strike, which I've heard was really beautiful and just harkened back to kind of like this old school San Francisco vibe of the community being out in the streets, singing together, and really just having this understanding that what the educators were fighting for was really for San Francisco, and not just, the working conditions they themselves need.
That's so powerful. Yeah, she talks about how educators won their core demands and how this strike helped transform both the union and the city.
And I just got to say, 4 days won all their core issues. If you want a good demonstration of how you can come together and make change, it's right there in San Francisco.
All labor has dignity.
Welcome to On the Line. I'm your host for today, Jeff Rosenberg. I'm joined by Natalie Creasy, the VP of Substitutes of the United Educators of San Francisco, or UESF, a union of more than 6,000 educators who just led the first strike since 1979. A historic 4-day-long strike that took home big wins across the board. The educators, the students, the community got wins on all major issues. And the city really stood behind you throughout this whole process. How does it feel?
It feels incredible. When we started the contract struggle, we did all the things that we needed to do to understand where the membership was at, what they wanted to fight for, where they were willing to fight, all of those things. And now it feels like way back when, it feels like years ago it wasn't. It feels like we made the right decision, because at the real heart of human rights is healthcare. That everyone connects to that, the need for healthcare. So that fight was huge. I think special education is at the centerpiece, not just for our educators, but for our students and families and community. People know we need to improve in that area, right? And then, of course, the idea of sanctuary and housing. Those are things that, especially in San Francisco, where the cost of living is outrageous, like just absolutely outrageous. The idea of unhoused students then having to learn, of our immigrant families and our immigrant students being just so destabilized by the constant threat, and that we as a union could stand with them and embed this into our contract. Sort of, it all felt like the right thing to do, but now we know it was the right thing to do, right? Like the community was behind us every step of the way. And looking back at the 4 days of the strike, we know we got stronger each day. We were stronger on the 4th day than we were on the 1st day. And to us, that means, we did the right thing. That feels really good. It feels right.
We bring that kind of approach sometimes into the bargaining room with us for people who are going there for the first time, who might be thinking like, maybe if we just make the right argument to them, we show them the right data, they're going to see reason. The boss doesn't respond to reason. The boss isn't even responding to the merits of the argument, but the district moved in the end because they saw the power on the streets. So we've seen that you played a really central role in the planning and leading of this strike. Can you take us under the hood? What was your thinking behind the strategy to build pressure and ultimately win this contract?
It's kind of hard to get into all the bits and pieces because there's a lot. But what I will say is that we have some foundational principles that not only myself, but the leadership of UESF feels very strongly about. And one of them is that the engagement with our membership has to be wide and multitudinous. So every step of the way, how much are we pulling in the members? How much are they part of the decision making? How much are they leading, and where are they leading at? So one of the biggest things that we had to do in order to prepare for this contract struggle was ensure that our structures at our sites, and we have both school sites and work sites, where we needed to know that we were ready to take on the kind of action that a strike requires. And so there's been a lot of practice. There's been a lot of organizing conversations. And organizing conversations are something that I think we say a lot. We just assume people are going to know what they are. I mean, at the heart of them, they're finding out what really matters to people and then putting forward a plan to win based on those things on an individual basis. And they're done one-on-one. Like, they're not done in emails. They're not done in text messages. Those things are useful forms of informative communication. But our leadership had to train itself in how do you have the right conversation and how do you not shy away from it with folks who are not yet convinced, right? And so the entire process was really a process of bringing on additional layers of members onto what we knew were the right demands, because we got that information, right? And I've talked about the bargaining team. There are other ways this has been done. So I'll say the site structures and building that and building what we have at the sites where the members work is key. Second of all, we have had amazing experiences with expanding the bargaining team so that we do really have all the voices represented, so that when something happens, one of the people who are from that kind of role can be like, no, that's the wrong thing. That's not how it happens. Or this is what we need right there in real time. And what's that done is built incredible leadership. Like, if you look at the fourth day of the strike at Embarcadero Plaza and you look at the program, like if you were to watch it from beginning to end, what you would see is evidence of that. There are paraeducators who are speaking in that program to the issues that are important to them that a year ago didn't know they should be on the bargaining team, right? And now they're on the bargaining team. It's like, that's just one example, but that's how that engagement piece is critically important. The members are the leaders, the members build the leadership, and we all work together collectively to move in that way. I think that's another piece that has been very important to us. I'll also add that, we don't just sort of decide things the week before we do them. We strategically plan everything. And you can't plan exactly how it's going to go, but what you can do is plan how you're going to escalate. You can plan how you want to engage people, what works for our membership and what doesn't. And so what I'm really proud of this time around is that the strategic plan, which in previous years have been built by maybe the executive board or a set of officers and staff, this year we opened our strategic planning in March of 2024 with the whole bargaining team. So the whole bargaining team was invited on a day off to come and sit and think about strategy, think about tactics, think about where we wanted to go after having won what we did the year before. That to me is key, is like, how do you expand the layers that are then building like you said, the ship together, right? Like sort of building to move that way. And that was really key to all of the strategy that happened. And then that becomes foundational to preparing for a strike, which takes an enormous amount of strategic and tactical thinking. Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us and for leading this incredible strike. Congratulations to you, to all the members, to all the students and families. Yeah, really beautiful thing to witness and be a part of. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
And now, from the SAG-AFTRA podcast, a look at artificial intelligence and acting. How did Harold not get this line?
Acting is in quotes here, seriously.
Yeah, we hear from writer, director, and Emmy-winning creator Sergio Chili, who created a viral video series called Will AI Actors Replace Us?
In it, he puts AI quote-unquote actors through typical audition scenarios and watches them fail spectacularly at everyday tasks.
I mean, seriously, if you have not found Sergio's Instagram page where he's got these reels, you have to look it up because this is hilarious. The videos have racked up more than 45 million views.
Quick question, Harold, as somebody in the business, I'd love to get your take.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing because he'll run the audition exactly like a director runs the audition. He says, okay, guys, this is what this scene is about. And now give me these lines. And the AI quote unquote actors will switch voices. They'll move incorrectly. Another person will just sort of appear out of nowhere. You'll be rolling on the floor when you watch them.
You're not worried, basically.
Not so much.
We've got a coworker named Al, and we've jump scared a few people in emails when we'll say, Al edited this, and they read it as AI edited your story. They're not thrilled. They're not thrilled to hear that.
Just so you guys know, if you get an email from Labor Notes about something happening, it's not AI. It won't be.
Real people over there at Labor Notes? Okay, good to know.
And mostly vampires. Real people and 2 vampires.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the SAG-AFTRA podcast. I'm Duncan Crabtree-Ireland, National Executive Director and Chief Negotiator of SAG-AFTRA. If you're a performer these days, you've seen the headlines about AI and wondered what it all means for your career. There's a lot of anxiety and uncertainty about what AI synthetics, what some call digital assets or figures, can actually accomplish. Well, my guest today, Sergio Chili, a writer, director, and Emmy-winning creator, had those same concerns. But rather than let them paralyze him, he decided to find out what these AI algorithms really could do. What he discovered was hilarious. It turns out they can't handle much at all. Sergio started auditioning AI actors to expose their limitations in a video series called Will AI Actors Replace Us? In just a few months, his videos have hit 45 million views and brought relief to performers who needed some good news and a few laughs. Sergio, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you didn't have much experience with AI before your series, from what I've been told. How did this all come about? Like, where did this inspiration arise?
It came out of fear, of course.
One of the great motivators.
Yes. Well, you got to push past it. But yes. It came from this summer of 2025. There was a lot of things in the news. I think there was like some updates to a few of the AI tools, and there was a lot of doom and gloom headlines. And my mom sent me one, and I just read it and was just like so down about it, and was just like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, we should just start looking for something else to do. And I was talking to my wife about it. And she said, when we get back from our trip, I think you should start playing around with AI just to at least, I'm a director, just to at least like know what it is that you're afraid of, so you can at least talk about it in an educated way. And so I did that, and I started playing around with it, and I made a couple like 100% AI videos, and was like, okay, this was like, there were some interesting things about it. You could have an idea, accomplish that idea within a day or two. But there were like so many limitations that after making a couple of videos, I was like, I don't know, this really isn't for me. I feel like I've gotten all I need to get out of it. I feel like if a client came to me and was like, oh, what do you think of AI? I feel like I have that answer. And then I was in the shower and I thought, maybe if there was like a human element to me interacting with AI, that would be really interesting. And I'd like worked with AI for a couple months, so I'd kind of logged in my mind all the things it can't do. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Instead of talking about what AI can do, I'm going to talk about what it can't do.
Well, that is kind of wonderful to hear, because I think that we hear so much about not just the current capabilities of AI, but what's going to be possible tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that. It's almost, we talk about fear. You said fear is a motivation for this. And like, there's a level of fear that can be protective and useful and help result in things like this. And there's a level of fear that I describe it, and others have described as paralyzing, and you can't let it get to that point. So, and certainly, bringing humor to the situation, I think, is extremely helpful in helping people process it. And so anyway, you created this concept of auditioning AI actors. Like, was there something like in your experience as an actor yourself that made you think of that? Or like, how did you crystallize that particular approach to this?
Well, so I was like a commercial actor for like 12 years, did a lot of commercials, did a lot of auditions, and then I transitioned into directing. So with the pandemic and even just like the current state of auditions, we do a lot of Zoom auditions. And I work with a lot of actors over Zoom or sometimes in person, obviously. And I just thought, what a perfect way to show what it can do by giving it scenarios. And the first one I did was like going kind of a broader audition of like the spectrum of emotion that any actor should be able to access. So I just thought it would be like a fun, easy way. And the other thing that I liked about it was I make the background blank white, like as if you were doing like an audition.
But like a self-tape or something?
Yeah, like a self-tape, yeah. Or like if you were at a casting office and, they have a pretty, like a blank wall. But the thing it also does is it takes away all the BS of AI videos. It's a lot of like smoke and mirrors. And when you're just left with like an image of a person talking, that's all it is. When I think you see a lot of these AI trailers, it's just like explosions, graphics, all these like running, turning into a monster or whatever.
Right, like shiny distraction.
Yes, yeah. And then when you get down to like the core of the performance, it's garbage.
So can you give us some examples of some of, I don't know, the most revealing or funniest sort of audition fails that have emerged through your process?
Yeah. So the easiest one to describe was they can't load a dishwasher. So I did a dishwasher commercial audition where all they have to do is put a pot in the dishwasher and say it's so easy, and they can't load the dishwasher. They'll throw it on the ground. They'll put it in upside down. They'll put it in and it goes through it.
All I need you guys to do is show how easy it is to load the dishwasher. Woman, you're going to say the new bottom rack fits your biggest pots and pans. Man, you say, great. Now I don't have to hand wash those.
Look how many plates I can fit in here. Great.
Olympic Rubly, great case. And now I don't have to hand wash those. Okay, again, you do need to actually load dishes in a dishwasher correctly. Otherwise, it's just weird, right? And sorry, sir, what was it that you said? Olympic Rubly, great case? Oh, Arbly Warbly, great case. Yeah, that's nothing. Let's just try it again.
It's really not good at also doing 3 or 4 person scenes. It can't handle like when you see good AI videos right now, pay attention to it's usually one person. There's a lot of voiceover, and there's very rarely like a multi-person scene. Like if you think about like the classic like dinner conversation scenes in movies, like it can't do that right now. And it will like either swap each other's voices, other people turn into other people. I did one for a Thanksgiving episode, and like, the grandma mutates into a toddler and runs off. I mean, it's like totally like fever dream weirdness.
Well, Sergio Chili, thank you so much for being on the SAG-AFTRA podcast. So, Sergio, where can our listeners find Will AI Actors Replace Us? Because I know they're going to want to search it out.
The best place is Instagram, and my handle is @Sergio Chili, SergioCilli.
No H.
No H.
All right. That's where we go.
These actors don't feel anything, and they're bloody hopeless. Let's put the link to Sergio's channel in the show notes.
Good idea.
Love that.
Okay, and now it's time for our speed round shows you should know.
Patrick Dixon bringing the sizzle. All right, so Working Voices brings us an interview with Iran's Workers' Communist Party's Shamal Ali.
The Labor Show with Jen Snell hosts a Women in Construction special edition featuring Angela Ferrito, Christy Brady, and Aaron Hoffman.
We definitely had a lot of women in labor shows this week because, of course, International Women's Day just this past Sunday.
That's right. Yeah, to celebrate International Working Women's Day, the Concrete Gang is taken over by the hosts of Tough as Nails CFMEU Women's Podcast.
And on the future of work, Anam Parvez explores why women are overrepresented in jobs vulnerable to automation and underrepresented in AI and STEM occupations.
On Pipe Up, United Association General President Mark McManus talks with Tom Bigley about the vital role plumbers play in protecting public health on World Plumbing Day.
You're a hero for getting through that.
I just wanted to hear him say it again, guys. Come on. That was worth the price of admission.
And I got a few more P's for you here. And on the Powerline podcast, Ryan talks with 18-year-old Hudson Lucas about pressure, identity, and what surprised him at the Lineman's Rodeo.
Wow, I cannot wait to hear that one. And folks, I can't believe we got through it. That is a wrap for this week's Labor Radio Podcast Weekly. A taste.
A teaser, if you will.
Just trying to...
Come on, bring a little Sunday to that.
In order.
From some of the more than 200 shows across the Labor Radio Podcast Network. Coming up on 250, in fact.
An amuse-bouche.
Love that. All clips are shared under fair use, and the views expressed are those of the producers and hosts, and not necessarily those of the network.
You can find links to every show at laborradionetwork.org and follow hashtag LaborRadioPod on Blue Sky, X, Facebook, and Instagram.
Hey, Natascha, Danielle, do you know how you can support the network?
I have no idea. Would someone please tell me?
You could buy union-made t-shirts, 2 colors, all sizes. Find them at laborradionetwork.org.
This podcast is recorded under a SAG-AFTRA collective bargaining agreement.
Edited this week by Patrick Dixon, produced by Chris Garlock, and social media, always and forever, by Harold Phillips.
For the Labor Radio Podcast Weekly, thanks for listening.
Stay active.
Stay tuned to your local labor radio or podcast show.
And we'll see you next week. But we probably won't see Danielle and Natascha next week because we've scared them away. They're going to run away screaming after this.
Possible.
I got to go hang upside down in my cave.
So what's the vampires thing about?
I don't know.
We both really like Nosferatu.
Well, Natascha actually didn't like it that much.
We have strong takes about Nosferatu. I'll say that.